showing their position, tried to get the children to be quiet, tried to tell them to shut up. The children couldn't shut up, they've just lost their eldest sister. And Yael bravely spoke to them in English and explained that they had just killed their sister, and that's why Shachar was crying so much and couldn't stop. And then the terrorists responded to her in English, "Don't worry, she's with your God now." Rocket sirens, horror, all live streamed onto Gali's Facebook. Gali doesn't live stream, so when the family, the rest of us, saw a notification that she was live streaming on Facebook, that is how most of us found out what happened. Can you imagine? Eventually, the terrorists finished their round around the community, killed whoever they needed to kill, and they brought the Miran family, our neighbors, into our sitting room, into the family sitting room of my family's house, which they kind of used as their staging point. Miran family, a beautiful young couple with 2 young children, Alma and Roni, 1 and 3. Eventually, sensing that the IDF were on approach, the terrorists retreated back to Gaza. They took some insurance with them. They took Omri and they took Tzachi. Barefoot, Tzachi still with the blood of his firstborn all over him, staining his clothes, his legs, his arms, complete shock. Frog marched him to Gaza. That was the last we saw him. The last time we ever saw any news of Tzachi was when Hamas sent us a video of him on their Telegram channel, where they said that he was dead, and they blamed it on Israel, they blamed it on Netanyahu. They did this with Omri too. And in the video you see both Tzachi, and then a few months later you see Omri, and they both look gaunt and skinny and pale and bleary-eyed and not well, but alive. And so when we saw the video, it was a very bittersweet moment, because we knew what was happening and how horrific it was to see him paraded triumphantly in this kind of psychological terrorism by Hamas. But at the same time, we saw Tzachi alive, and we knew he was alive, and it was a bittersweet moment. They did this with many of the hostages. They treated it like a game show. They would say, "Are they alive? Are they dead?" And they wouldn't answer the question. They would leave us to wonder. And they would end their messages with the ubiquitous red inverted triangle that now see everywhere on our streets here in the UK and around the world, with people chanting, "Death to Israel, death to Jews," praising Hamas, praising Hezbollah. This is what they support. It's been 365 days. Every day I wake up with that horrendous feeling that I had waking up on October 7th, dreading to check the notifications on my phone in case some new horror has happened while I slept for the few hours I could manage. This is not an easy time. A few days ago, we marked what would have been Mayan's 19th birthday. Today, my family are spending it together before tomorrow, having to think about her death. Today we celebrate her life. A beautiful young woman, the whole world ahead of her, a talented volleyball player. Her first romance, she was in love. She just got her license. She was driving. She was feeling independent. all snuffed away by the evil Hamas. 100 and what hostages with similar stories, families wishing every day, thinking, driving themselves mad, thinking what they can do. Last week I was in New York, banging my head against the wall, talking to UN officials, dignitaries, heads of state. Last week I was in Downing Street, meeting the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister, begging them to do more. I know no one's doing enough. I'm not doing enough. You're not doing enough. Our Prime Minister's not doing enough. The Israeli government's not doing enough. Most certainly the United Nations is not doing enough. The US government and so on. And the reason why I can tell you that confidently is because the hostages are not home. When they are home, we can rest. Until then, let me just end by thanking every one of you for being a voice for them. Some days, I gotta tell you, in all honesty, I'm tired. I don't sleep, I barely eat. I just do what I can for my family. But I have to, they're my family. But you don't. You do it selflessly. You do it because you are the embodiment. When we say Am Israel Chai, it's not just a slogan. You are the embodiment of Am Israel Chai. You are the reason why we will succeed as a people, while this day, this nightmare will end. And one day we can dream of the day when our hostages are returned, our loved ones are returned, our people are united, and we prosper as one. Am Israel Chai. Thank you so much for everything you do. Please continue to be a voice for the hostages. Speak out, stand up, unafraid. You are not Jews with trembling knees. Thank you so much. Shana Tova.
Thank you, Adam, from the heart. Our final speaker today is the very famous John Mann, who we are thrilled to welcome today. He's a very famous Leodensian, even. He's currently sitting in the House of Lords, a former Labour MP for Basildlaw. Is that right? Basildlaw. In 2019, Lord Mann famously refused to stand as a candidate for the Labour Party in protest at Jeremy Corbyn's failure to tackle rampant anti-Semitism within the party, to take up the full-time post as the government's anti-Semitism czar. So a big round, please, for Lord Mann.
I'm no different to any of you. Just a grain of sand. A tough grain of sand. I've lasted 5 prime ministers now. But a single grain of sand. And you're all single grains of sand. But when you put the sand together, then you can create a beach. And if we want to stop a flood, we're always going to need to have a beach. And so what you've done by turning out today is as important as anything anyone has done anywhere today. Remembering, honouring, in anger, in frustration, in defiance, thinking of the absurdity that anyone could want anything other than the immediate return of every single hostage now. So I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank the organisers. These things don't just happen. I want to thank the police. I want to thank the council leader, the MPs who are here. And I want to thank the Community Security Trust. That's who I spoke to a year ago. At 8:32 in the morning, the Chief Executive, Mark Gardner, of the Community Security Trust. Because it was clear how immense and seismic the events that were only just unfolding were going to be. And sadly, we were right. But what we need to do, not you, we, what we need to do is to hold firm, is to stay strong, is to be clear on what we're saying on our messaging. That's defiance. And not to be distracted by anybody else. And I can assure you, spend an awful lot of my time dealing with extremists and how to counter extremists. A lot more than I could tell you in terms of what is happening and what will be happening and how, of what succeeded and what has failed and why. Time will come to go through that. Not now. But in dealing with that, in dealing with Iran ringing me up on, perhaps it's the press, on my personal mobile phone, in dealing with the kinds of things that CST have been so magnificent at stopping that you don't know about, at dealing with what government needs to do and kicking them hard, bloodily, whatever they fail to move, whoever's in government, whoever's the minister. And I've told them just in the last few days again, current government, they'll hear what they have to hear, and if they don't act and don't do what's correct, I'll have to make it a bit wider, because there is no other alternative. You see, if we as a society, as a country, allow our Jewish community to continue having a year like you've experienced this year, then we're not really a country. We're not really a civilization. We're getting rid of everything that we have. Well, I can tell you that's not going to happen. The main reason it's not going to happen is because of you. Because you're not going to allow it to happen. And I have a message of, I don't know if you call it hope, but let me tell you, the vast, overwhelming majority of people in this city, in this county, in this country are overwhelmingly behind you in this, for decency, for democracy, against extremism, for having every single hostage returned. And yet, we can bemoan that silent majority. But it's a silent majority on our side, not against us. And that, I think, is a vital message that everyone needs to understand, not least those in power. Because that is the vast consensus in this country. And let me tell you as well, you're not going to be deserted by those who've been standing with you. Whether they've been vocal enough, whether they've been effective enough. My father walked out of that hospital, it's a long time ago, over 40 years. And he walked to that building there, and he wasn't meant to walk, because he'd been given, he refused to pay for it, a private room in order to die of cancer in there. And he walked out to that meeting, to that building, 2 days before he died, to attend a meeting of the Leeds Council for Racial Equality. Well, let me tell you, I know many of the people who've done a lot of work in standing alongside the Jewish community. Don't ever think that we will leave you on your own, because we will not. We will stand with the Jewish community. We will fight with the Jewish community. And where we can, we will help organise for more effective campaigning, for a more effective voice, because we are going to win. We're going to win the battle, we're going to win the war. You as a community, as the Jewish community here and across the world has always done, will continue, if you like, to rebuild the beach. Will continue to rise again. Will continue to be Jewish as you choose to be, on your terms, not on anyone else's terms. Free to do so. Free to be yourselves, free to be your community. And today, in this horrendously sad, appalling anniversary, let's just give that message out and keep it simple. And I end with 4 words, because it's all any of us need to say. Free the hostages now. Free the hostages now. Free the hostages now. Let everyone across this city, this county, this country, this world know. Free the hostages now. Free the hostages now. Free the hostages now. Free the hostages now. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I'd now like to introduce Hannah Winnick.
Six months ago, an anxious group of Jews from North Leeds took to the streets for the very first time as Leeds leads against anti-Semitism. Our aim was to counter-protest the Women in Black, a pro-Palestinian group of women who hold a silent vigil each week in Dortmund Square. We didn't really know each other. We weren't sure what the women across the road would think of us, and we definitely did not know how we would be received by the general public. But after that initial 90 minutes together, we knew that we had started something very special. Now, every Tuesday, Leeds Leads Against Anti-Semitism has a presence in town. People know we're going to be there. They wait to talk to us, and some have even started joining us in our weekly actions. The aim of us being there is to talk to the public about the hostages still held in Gaza, about the ongoing situation in Israel, and to explain to them how the rising anti-Semitism in the UK and across the world is affecting our community. We hand out leaflets, as you've seen at the back, on all sorts of topics, from Israel and Gaza and the LGBTQ plus rights across the Middle East to anti-Semitism and the Holocaust. We talk about the current situation as it unfolds and have some really interesting conversations with people from all across the world. Of course, not every person we engage with is positive, but I think that about 85% of the general public are, which is a much larger number than we had ever thought. It's heartening to hear words of encouragement and support, to get thumbs up and even the odd hug, especially when we have felt like the whole world is against us. Our group has now grown, and we're now not just an anxious group of Jews from North Leeds, but a group that includes all sorts of people: Christians, Hindus, Muslims, students, retirees, and everybody in between. Even within this crowd today, we have many more allies than we first imagined we would when we started. Take a look around and see how many faces you don't recognise. These are our fantastic allies, and we are so lucky to have them supporting us. I know from my own experiences how cathartic these weekly sessions are, and how by 2 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon I always feel much better. The weeks when I've not been able to attend have always felt much longer, and I'm always raring to go at the following session. We're hoping to restart our Sundays in the coming weeks, and we would love to have some new faces to add to our Leeds family. Now, I could stand here and talk about this all day, but I thought it would be better to hear from the volunteers themselves. So I would like to introduce to you Tess, Harun, Louisa and David to tell you a little bit about their experiences.
I wanted to do something to answer the call of the families of those innocent people kidnapped and held by the terrorist organisation Hamas. And today I'm thinking of one hostage who is a British citizen, Emily Damari. The families asked us to act, to keep the hostages in the headlines, join rallies, spread the truth, and the weekly Tuesday vigils give us the opportunity to do all that. What is it like on those weekly vigils? Often it is not easy. I have been asked how much I get paid to be there, told what I'm doing is disgusting, and that I kill Palestinian babies. And I hear words of support and encouragement from the good people of Leeds. I have been told that more people than we might think do support Israel, urged to keep going, told that people are praying for the hostages, that they see what the Jewish community is facing and support us. And sometimes there are real conversations that cut through the propaganda and hatred. Conversations make a connection through which I've been able to encourage another perspective, challenge misinformation, and talk about how releasing the hostages is a humanitarian issue. The vigils are a small but positive action to take, and you can do it too. Please join us.
Hi. Volunteering with the Leeds Against Anti-Semitism team is really important to me because standing against hate is everyone's responsibility. The tragic events of October the 7th remind us of the devastating impact of anti-Semitism and hatred. It's a threat not only to the Jewish community but to the values of equality and respect that we all share. By coming together, we show that love and unity will always triumph over hate and division. Thank you.
So I just want to say, before I talk about my own experience on Tuesdays, that this catastrophe has shown me how much resilience the Leeds Jewish community has and how you look after each other, and I'm really proud to be your friend. October the 7th, that was a turning point for me. I watched as it unfolded that morning, more or less live, mostly on X. Since that day, many things that I was able to let slide in the past are now unconscionable. The many otherwise intelligent people that I admired, even loved, were eager to display what they see as their important pro-Palestinian activism at that catastrophic moment. They seemed to me like the worst kind of idiot. I got into a couple of arguments online and in real life. I don't think it made much difference to them, but it made a big difference to me. My friends and colleagues, it seemed, were without any capacity for insight, reason, reflection, or intelligence, and I have never felt so lost and so let down and so angry at my tribe. I've always been a part of the arty, left-wing community. That's because I've always worked in the arts. My whole life I've worked in the arts, and I have a strong social conscience, so I've leaned to the left. I fitted more or less. But for a long time, I've thought that the left's obsession with Palestine was foolish, misguided, misinformed, and I couldn't understand how they were happy to let it take priority over all else. But I was happy at the time to disagree. That has completely changed during this conflict. Now I'm happy to tell anyone who will listen that the Western left, my people, are not only wrong but dangerous. I'm not Jewish, but thank you. I'm not Jewish, but that doesn't mean I don't have any skin in this game. The whole world will be a safer place for all of us if more people will stand up against the many jihadi movements that are currently ruining the world for so many innocent people. I think most people who know anything at all can see Hamas for what it is, a murderous death cult that has to be fought. The same with Hezbollah and the Iranian regime. They are fascistic, they are genocidal, and the Western left have it backwards. So much projection. At the Tuesday lunchtime events in Leeds city centre, I have found that people can listen and do listen. This has restored my faith somewhat. The passers-by who engage with us tend to be the kind of people who are happy to admit that they don't know much about the situation in Israel or the Middle East and the Levant area. Those people who can't listen and won't engage are lost, and they may never find their way back. I try to talk to the others. Those people that are lost, they seem to think that they are righteous, good people, and they really, really aren't. Most of my friends are now ex-friends, even a couple of Jewish ones. I don't mind. I'm not glad to be rid of them because it's lonely without them. But I'm glad that I don't have to talk to them about this anymore. And I'm glad of the new friends that I've made. Finally, I'm glad to be using my gift of the gab and my facility for words and my capacity for understanding other people to do something concrete every Tuesday, or most of them, that I'm sure makes a difference. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sometime in the early 70s, my late father sat me down and told me that he had something very, very important to talk to me about. He wanted to tell me about two occasions in his life that made a huge difference and that I needed to know about them. He firstly told me about the time when he was 12 years old. He was born in the East End of London, and at just 12 years old he scaled a lamppost in Cable Street, where he lived, and he was protesting against Mosley and his fascist black shirts. He threw bricks at them, and him and his fellow protesters were able to stop the march in its tracks, away from the predominantly Jewish area. Secondly, he recalled at the age of 22, fighting his way through France and finally into Germany with his unit, where they were one of the first to reach the concentration camp at Bergen-Belsen. After describing the horrors that he saw, he went on to say he hoped that I would never have to stand up and be counted as he had to, but he knew that God forbid if I had to, I most certainly would. So, following the unforgettable atrocities of October the 7th, and then in the ensuing British and worldwide anti-Semitic reaction to that, including within my city of Leeds, I had no hesitation in joining Leeds against anti-Semitism. My wife Susan and I stand at the top of Lands Lane every Tuesday, come rain or shine, usually rain, handing out leaflets, having conversation, holding banners and placards, whichever anybody's happy to do, whilst being supported by the wonderful West Yorkshire Police. These actions that we take are very good, not just for the community, but for our own personal mental health and feeling of well-being, because in a virtually impossible situation, we are doing something positive to fight the anti-Semitic narrative. We know that we make a difference by the many positive and important conversations that we have and by the reactions that we receive. Yes, we do get negatives quite regularly, but it's often an opportunity to put forward the truth in response to those negatives. Believe me, it is a lot more satisfying than screaming at the news on the TV. We have become a real band of brothers and sisters, and I ask all of you that have the time and the ability to be able to join us, please consider coming to join us. Am Israel Chai.
Thank you, everybody. So you see that we have a selection of our volunteers that have come up here, so I'd like to give them a round of applause, thanking them very much. We have Bolly the dog. Finally, I'd like to introduce Marshall, who's going to finish off the proceedings.
Distinguished guests, and to all of the supporters of Leeds Against Anti-Semitism here today. I have the great honour of thanking everyone for attending this event. However, before I do, I would like to say a few words. Our hearts reach out to each and every victim of the biggest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, and of course to those still held in captivity. However, it was not just Jews that were taken. The Hamas terrorists butchered anyone they could, irrespective of age, religion or nationality. From babies through to Holocaust survivors, men and women. And those they didn't murder, as we have heard from Adam, they took to Gaza. And those people have been in a living hell for a year now. What must they be going through? What must their families be going through? We will not rest until each and every hostage is brought back home. October the 7th impacted on each and every one of us in different ways. Disbelief, horror, fear and anger, to name but a few descriptions. Since October the 7th, those feelings have been amplified with the abhorrent rise in anti-Semitism on our streets, be it with the hateful marches here in our beloved city of Leeds, or the vile rhetoric we see every day on social media. But we as a community are resilient, and together with our amazing and dedicated committee, Leeds Against Anti-Semitism has become the voice of our community on the streets of Leeds. Thank you to each and every volunteer that has stood with us on our Tuesday vigils, who has marched through Leeds with us, and who is here today. We are a community that every single one of us should be proud of. Thank you. I'd now like to thank everybody for attending. Firstly, I'd like to thank Fabian Hamilton and Mark Seawoods that was here. I think he's still here. All of the councillors, the clergy, our amazing speakers obviously, and to thank you as well. Your presence has been pivotal in making us today a success. So on behalf of everybody at LLAA, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We must also take a moment to thank so many of our unsung heroes. Debbie, Jane and I would not be able to do what we do without half of what we do, without the outstanding support and dedication of our committee. Could we please have a round of applause for Hannah, Ruth, Ben, Alyssa, Zoe, Simon, Tess and Dilany. Your dedication and commitment is simply amazing. Thank you. We'd also like to thank Steve Bootle and Balloonatics for their help today as well. We also need to thank those that have supported us financially. This would not have been possible without your amazing support. You know who you are, and we respect your wishes to stay anonymous. In the words of Mark Twain, kindness is a language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see. Thank you. We must, as always, thank West Yorkshire Police for their amazing support. And of course, CST for helping make us feel so safe today. CST are an integral part of the community, and now more than ever, we appreciate their amazing work. Ladies and gentlemen, before we close today's proceedings, we would like to invite you to stay behind, as was mentioned earlier, to visit the installations, take photographs, and remember the hoodies and there's some jewellery for sale as well at the bottom end of the square. If anybody can stay behind at the end to help us clear up, it would be amazing. We would really appreciate it. I would now like to invite, once again, the amazing Tammy Sobel to sing Hatikva and, of course, the national anthem. Please join in and sing loud and sing proud.
I'm going to sing the Hatikva and then I'm going to read the English translation because I think it's very important to understand what it's all about.
long as in the heart within the Jewish soul yearns, and toward the eastern edges onward, an eye gazes towards Zion. Our hope is not yet lost. The hope that is 2,000 years old, to be a free nation in our land, the land of Zion, Jerusalem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everybody. Safe journey home. Thank you for supporting us.